one of the best things about this test is that we give you actionable items to deal with the DNA results of the test. And that's what we're going to cover today. So we're into the mental health and cognitive performance section of the test. We start up high with brain repair and maintenance. And I have a few things highlighted here. Um, it's good to know that if you are ever see average, that means good, and you can ignore it. So if this marker here is under average, we just move on. It helps you save time during the test review, and something that we don't have to worry about. So in this case, the person has medium priority, and medium to high, is where we start to focus. Sorry, trying to get this little marker out of my way. Thank you. And what does this mean? So what this means is that there are multiple genes responsible for our daily neural repair and maintenance of our brain. And a combination of a genotype. So a genotype is the expression of the individual gene that you have. Is it a wild type? Is it a heterozygote type? It doesn't really matter what the genotype is, but the genotypes that one has, and are plural genotypes, are associated with decreased neural repair. And this is very common. So we're going to see people who are medium high priority, and that is when we want to really take action. So this person has a genotype combination associated with slightly reduced neural repair. Now, if you're high priority, it would come up say, you know, uh, uh, you know, highly reduced, or definitively reduced neural repair, which can affect healing from brain injuries and amplify damage from poor sleep patterns. So two things we're looking at: brain injuries and damage from poor sleep patterns. So for this person to have neural repair, which we all want every night when we sleep, we want good sleep patterns. So if this person were high priority, we tell them it's time to really avoid activities with high risk of concussions. Again, this is we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but if there were risking around concussions and CTE and such, that we would avoid it. I just want to check one thing for you here. So the key for most of us, we're not playing football, we're not boxing, we're not playing rugby, we're not doing a lot of like high risk concussion impact activities, but 8 hours of sleep. Now that's could be for some people like, I never really get more than 7, regardless of work or family life. I just don't. That's okay. But we're pushing for that. That's kind of ideal, especially when you're sitting here in medium or high priority for neural repair. Now, we can't always get that sleep. So what else can we do? We can be proactive with endurance exercise. They say safe because they don't want people doing, head trauma exercise here. We don't want people with and so then getting DHA, sorry, B vitamins and lion's mane mushroom, zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin E, and specifically, kind of foods rich in those. So then you could say you see this result, you get these results from your patients or the tests. There's also, for this person, they don't have concussion recovery in there. So I'm gonna, because it didn't come up in their genotypes, their genes. So I'm going to show you that as well. And we're going to come back to this. Sorry. Try to open this up, make it large for you. Just toggling between two different ports. Take a look here. Stop share. Gonna make this bigger so you can see it. A lot of the tests have the results for this. which is this one here. Under brain repair maintenance, which we were, now is concussion recovery. So this is people who have this specific genotype based on their genes. Not everybody has this, but they have delayed or improved concussion recovery, and this genotype associated with a moderate rate of recovery from concussions. And then again, strategies to deal with it. University of Buffalo has done a lot of research with um, concussions and helping people with post-concussion syndrome. Obviously, the worst case scenario is moving somebody toward CTE and not getting the repair they need. So back to our sample test we were looking at. So the other thing I want you to note here, kind of take in, let's turn off this camera. Is that you see things that are very specific. So for example, lion's mane mushroom. Huh, why not other mushrooms? Why lion's mane mushroom here for neural repair and brain health? Well, the reason it's so specific here is that they did a clinical trial with people with this genotype and who were at high priority and saw that they got enhanced neural repair with utilizing lion's mane mushroom. Does that mean other mushrooms aren't helpful? No, of course, they're very helpful. But the study said this, so we have to go by what the study said and, um, be true to that and what the science says and the specific mushroom that was used. So in this case, lion's mane mushroom, great. And they have a scale of how they test people in terms of cognitive neural repair and what have you. And by using the lion's mane mushroom, people did better on it. So if you have any questions, just throw them into the chat box. I'll help you there. Next is mental health and cognitive performance is episodic memory. This is a big one. This is, where we're all thinking about like, where did I leave my keys? What was the name of that person I just met? What's the name of that actor or actress I really like in that movie? Just that, you know, um, that episodic memory stuff that seems to hit us all as we age, but we really want to stay sharp and, keep that crisp memory. So there's a gene, and we can find this out through the test, that's associated with the episodic memory and the ability to recall details of an event. So oh yeah, where was I 6 months ago? We took that trip and we went to that town in Italy. What was the name of it? I was at a great restaurant. I can't even remember the name of that place. That's episodic memory, right? And people lacking that ability to recall things and details within those events. And it's not indicative of dementia or Alzheimer's, but it's just the ability of the brain to have that recall. So what we're going to do is when we have this genotype that gives us a high priority, which means we have reduced episodic memory. That's just the way it is. Luck of the draw. That's their brain, the person's brain, this person's brain right here. That we can enhance it. And how do we know that? Because people with this genotype were given tryptophan, green and black tea, catecholamines, betaine and choline, and they did better. People with this genotype were put through mindfulness training, were asked to increase their VO2 max and reduce their reliance on smartphones to all enhance their episodic memory. And these strategies worked. So again, when you bring this to your patients and you say, we're going to do this overall DNA test, we're going to find out a lot about you and make you, feel better. These are the things that we're doing. So we don't know what we're going to find, right? And just in this case, we found episodic memory high priority. And then you talk to this person, they said, do you like tea or coffee? So I like tea a lot. Great. Then we want you to be doing that daily as opposed to your coffee, if that's no different for you. Great, I'll do it. Yeah, no problem. All right, we want you eating foods rich in tryptophan. We want you eating foods rich in catecholamines, betaine and choline. What about this type of exercise? What about, this and that? So giving people all these strategies to support them, especially if they find that they are, slipping a little bit or having naturally having issue with this. Like, with people tell, like I do, people say, I always forget, I meet people, I recognize them, their face, but I forget their name, as soon as I'm introduced to them because I'm thinking about something else or something I want to tell them. And then you're like, oh, what was that person's name? Or, whatever it is, doesn't matter. All here and things you can do to help them. Next is cardio, mood, and cognitive fitness. So what does that mean? This is influencing our neurotransmitters, our memory, and our cognitive fitness and mood based on exercise, if that's a priority or not. Some people you see here average, it's not a priority at all. Others, it's a high priority. Medium, kind of puts us in the middle. But what does it mean? So if it were a high priority, then you'd want to tell the patient dealing with mood and memory and having a strong brain for them. 30 minutes of cardio 5 times a week is the target to hit for improved mood and cognitive fitness. Might sound like a lot, but as we all know as clinicians, uh, cardio is also good for the heart. It's good for circulation. It's good for muscle and bone growth and aging. But in this case, for this person, it's also good for mood and fitness. And so if people are putting 30 minutes towards exercise, be it weightlifting, walking, or whatever, kind of ask them, can you get at least 30 minutes of cardio in there 5 times a week? And it's very important. So that's that. Next in cardio, mental health and cognitive performance, excuse me, is mood based on folate. So we have this gene, NTHFR. We covered it a lot in our methylation section a few weeks ago. Determines our folate requirements for healthy BH4 levels, which is then responsible for our neurotransmitter balance. The current daily value for folate is about 400 micrograms, but including food equivalent. And so this person, high priority and medium priority, they need 400 to 600 for healthy BH4. So what does that mean for them? One of two things. Either eating foods high in folate, which include liver, spinach, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. There are others, or supplementing, right? Because you really want to keep them in good mood and feeling good, and just imagine this little trick, and this can really impact how they feel. So important to know. And they could tell you, yeah, when I eat well, I do feel better. Interesting. Okay. Well, please make note of that. And we're gonna show you at the end how to make this easier, but we'll get to that in a second. Next is mental health, cognitive performance around anxiety, but this time based on choline, not folate. So there's a specific gene, not MTHFR, but the PEMT gene, which is associated with your required choline intake to support memory, anxiety, and REM sleep. So the PEMT genotype associated with a higher need of choline to support memory, anxiety, and REM sleep. And so the research done in the studies that uridine, which is basically RNA, DHA, and choline combined, we put those three together, increase the levels of phosphatidylcholine in the brain more than each one individually on their own. So either eating foods that contain all three or eating meals that contain all three, or supplementing all three. But foods high in choline right here are the list. Liver, again, it's a superstar. Eggs, beef, chicken breast, chicken thigh, edamame. And again, you can Google and find other sources as well. And we're going to go down to our food list at the end, which is the fun part of this test, and look at it there. And by the way, as we move through this, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. Next is anxiety, and this time it's glutamate and GABA. So we've covered, anxiety with choline, mood with folate, and now, again, rounding out the neurotransmitters, glutamate and GABA. So anxiety is linked to altered levels of one or multiple neurotransmitters. And then understanding this genetic link will allow us to be precise in our approach to reduce anxiety. Now, I highlighted some here I just want to kind of lead into. Um, but again, this person would be in a medium priority. That means they could have high glutamate and low GABA that could lead to too much anxiety. But look at this. Is there anyone you've ever met that too much sugar and caffeine wouldn't create high glutamate and low GABA mental state? I mean, yeah, of course there are, but the reality is this is a good, obvious one that people get jittery, their mood changes, sugar high, sugar blues, sugar lows, caffeinated, I'm all energy, I'm all pep, and then I'm crashing. I mean, these are these folks right here. And it's affecting their brain. They didn't know better. They don't know better. They think that these uppers that they're taking, are going to maintain, but of course they break down and the neurotransmitters decrease, and then we get to all this. So avoiding the caffeine and the sugar is a great starting place. And then next, cardio exercise again. High intensity training is great. Yoga has been found through studies to balance the glutamate and GABA levels. So all three of these times. So, moving the body and doing creative exercise, really helpful. B6 and magnesium have helped convert excess glutamate to GABA, which then calms us, and then increasing prebiotic intake to increase GABA levels and slow down an overactive mind and to assist sleep. And I'll just interject here. We know way more now about the mind gut health axis, the brain gut axis, and that what is happening in the gut is super important to what's going on with your neurotransmitters and your dopamine and serotonin and GABA, glutamate levels. That indeed, if your gut flora is off, if you're missing key microbes, despite what you're eating, you might have an inability to produce the right neurotransmitters or neurotransmitters at a level that you need at all. There's a lot of ways to get after that, on top of having a high priority here. So a high priority here is like, what are we going to do for the neurotransmitters? Well, we're going to do if it's happening kind of 24/7 in the gut and the lack thereof. So if you have any questions about that, you can email me and we can talk about that separately. I know a couple really, really great strategies around there. Next is fear response. So this is this very specific gene that's associated with anandamide levels. That's correlated with a higher heightened fear response to potential threats, and variants affect the ability to extinguish the fear response. So it's one thing to have a fear response, right? Get startled and be scared, and there are many good reasons to have that. And then why can't we calm down afterward? It's like, I can't shake the fact that I was startled today. The police car went whizzing by me. I thought I was going to get pulled over. They just kept going. It wasn't to do with me, but I'm rattled. I don't know, or a person is, or other things that might have happened in their day. They're just not calming down. They're not relaxed after giving that big presentation or speech. They have an inability to extinguish even fear response or fear memories because of the neurochemicals in their brain, especially if they're a high priority. Now, not a lot of people have this, but some people do. So when they have these feelings, when they're there, we really need to help them. I always like to, think about like some people can, they love roller coasters and getting scared, and other people like, that was awful. I don't ever want to do that again. It's the same thing, going to the top of a mountain and seeing extremely high, steep, sloped, ski thing, and someone is like terrified and they get through it and like, that was great. And other people are like, that was so scary. I don't want to do that again. And it's having to do with their kind of genetic response to fear. And then of course, again, as always, there's strategies to deal with it. 30 minutes or more of aerobic exercise. That's a great one. Then, things like CBD and herb like hops can help as well, calm people down without drugs. Next is addiction. So, this is more interesting when it's high priority, but this is good, medium to high priority. So what are we talking about here? Talking about this gene that modulates our density of dopamine receptors in the brain.
and it's one of the most studied genetic variants related to addiction. And of course, variants have been associated with alcohol addiction, opioid, sugar, compulsive eating, obesity, and internet. So let's just take a step back and let me explain how this works. Somebody's average, that's a lot of people. And this average person has a nice density of dopamine receptors. So I give you this example. And again, tell me if you can relate to it. Imagine there's a Saturday and you don't have to work. But instead of being able to plan something you really wanted to do, no matter what that was or would be, you had a laundry list of 10 things to do, including laundry, errands to run, things to fix around the house, um, clothes, picking up, dry clean, whatever. Things that could take you a few hours. And so these are things that you might never choose to do if you said, oh, this is my day off. I'm going to go to the beach or go to the gym or whatever you choose, cook, whatever you want to do, go to the museum is over here. But you can't do that. So you have to do all these things. When you do all those things and you complete them, you actually do get a response. You get a uh, reward response. We're going to talk about that a little bit more down here. But when that happens, because your dopamine receptors, you feel pretty good. Now, if you're not getting that and you feel no sense of accomplishment from things you do, and again, this is also in the reward system, these work together, you're getting these from these other outside substances, alcohol, drugs, sugar, eat food, and so on, internet, computers, and social media, I guess. Scrolling endlessly, watching videos endlessly, what people get caught up doing um, to deal with the high priority on your addiction. Now, combine it with reward system, which is again a dopamine response. So now over here we have the receptors. Either we have a high density of them or we don't. If we don't, we're more susceptible to addiction. And again, think about it this way. Millions of Americans have taken opioids for pain, hundreds of thousands get addicted. So there's a reason why not everyone gets addicted because it doesn't hit some same people the same way. But importantly, those who get addicted are like, wow, I've never really gotten this great feeling before because they had such a low density perception of dopamine. So now the reward system, this is how we're producing dopamine based on things we're doing. So remember I said that like Saturday where you're getting all these things done, your body's producing dopamine. You're feeling good about yourself. It wasn't what you'd choose to do that day, but you did do those things. You got them done. And you got a sense of accomplishment. There's other people who get that same list of things to do, go about their day, do those things, and they feel just as cranky and angry as when they saw the list and the things they had to do. They're not getting that reward. They're getting low reward system. They're getting a lower dopamine response to reward processing that um, hurts motivation and decision making, like making a good choice. Like, oh, should I? Had a bad day. I didn't do anything fun. I've just been doing errands or working or whatever. And I'm not motivated to go to the gym. And in fact, I'm just going to eat that, you know, Danish, whatever people do, because they're feeling bummed out and they want to feel better and they make a bad decision and try to produce a dopamine from that. So, we look at it as like willpower. It's not willpower, it's genetics. It's physiological chemical responses in the brain that, you know, people are lucky to be honestly who have high reward system and average addiction. They're given these great genes um, is good. Earlier, and this goes back like in our genes. This goes back a long way. It's not something we learned, in this generation or last generation or the generation before that. This is like a long time. And if you go back up here to fear response, well, why would fear response be high? Well, it probably was an adaptive trait that evolved with humans in a very good way. Just imagine living in a coastal village in Scandinavia, Great Britain, or northwestern Europe, and a boat of menacing Vikings come to your village. A healthy, elevated fear response from people who had it they probably went and hid, they went in different places to avoid these marauders. And people who were like had no fear walked up to like, hey guys, how are you doing? And they took a club to the head, and they didn't pass on those genes. Now things are different, obviously, in the world, but it's good to have some modicum of fear response, healthy fear response to what is truly dangerous versus what isn't. Next comes warrior or strategist. This is an interesting one. This kind of um, leans into who we are as our personality type. There's this gene um, that kind of balances our levels of dopamine and how our traits of who we are. And so high dopamine is useful in complex environments that that require maximal performance in terms of memory and attention for survival. Um, and for some people, if that dopamine gets too high, like that sugar and coffee person, they find themselves irritable, impulsive, and stressed. And so if you find yourself there, strength training 3 to 5 times a week, increase the magnesium, vitamin C intake for balance. And if they're average to low intake, so we're going to have coffee, green tea, berries. Um, and warrior is people who are like responsive under stress and strategist. Let's see if I find another one with a little more explanation for these. I mean, I've seen them all, but it's just good for explanatory um, kind of. I mean, hybrid is kind of a nice place to be because kind of balances you. But we definitely know there are people who are really high functioning under high stress environments, the warrior, and then people who are really high functioning under a quiet, calm environment. Like this strategist person, they can sit down and take a test, and a person who is a warrior, they can go up and perform in front of thousands of people, sing an opera, throw a baseball, do things under high stressed, high leverage situations, right? They just have it in them. And so um, it's based on our genes and who we are. And it kind of makes sense, right? And I'm just trying to find you guys another one. Yeah, all right, here's a different one. So anyway, that we're going to get into sleep support in 1 second, but let me just show you this other one over here that has one of these um, individualized, not just hybrid. Let's see what it looks like. There you go. This is a person who's warrior. So, and if they were strategist, it would say your genotype associated with strategist. But basically, warrior has lower dopamine levels, but a higher threshold for pressure and may even thrive in those environments. Lower dopamine levels are useful in threatening environments where maximal performance is required despite threat and pain. So, warrior as it means, of course, and people who are kind of first responders tend to trend toward warrior, or maybe because they're a warrior, they trend toward that kind of lifestyle. In sports where they can, and then performers of all the arts, who have to get in front of people and perform. The strategist wouldn't even consider that like crazy. Why would I go to, Carnegie Hall and sing in front of 1,000, 10,000 people? And this person's like, that's great. Can't wait to do it. So, um, but when they find that they're can't sit, this warrior person can't sit down and take a test, they can't just calm down and relax. And I don't mean like they're running around the house being wild, but they have that in them and they don't do as well under a high stress, quiet, calm situation. Well, they can support themselves with coffee, green tea, chocolate, bananas, and berries. um, which is interesting because, um, you know, you would think that they're already there a little bit, but yeah. But they can definitely help themselves there. So that's the warrior, and then the strategist is the last one. So let's get back to our report that we were looking at and finish up this section. Where are we at? All right. Right. So we saw pressure response, and now we're into sleep support. And this one is a little more self-explanatory. Huh, I'm getting AI note taker harasses me all the time. Sleep support. So we have our recommended wake time. For this person, it's early. This person, average, late. Research has found that based on these genes, they have a significant association with delayed melatonin release in the evenings, a substantially longer duration of elevated melatonin levels in the morning. So due to melatonin release ending earlier, this person in the morning for your genotype, an earlier wake time might be easier without light exposure. Like, they're waking up naturally in a nice dark environment, whereas someone's average or late wake time because they had a delayed release. Um, and have elevated melatonin in the morning, they would want to sleep in later. And we know babies and children and teenagers have a lot more melatonin than adults and elderly in terms of production. They're getting a lot more recovery, a lot more repair, a lot more growth happening in those times, and they sleep in. Um, and if they have this genotype, they sleep in even later. So you're waking up, that teenager on the weekend, well, they're getting sleep because the melatonin's there, and that's who they are. So to get the proper brain growth and development and physiological growth and development, sleeping in works better for them. So get the sleep. There are good strategies around this. So you're talking about melatonin supplementation was not found to cause impaired glucose intolerance for this genotype. So they can do okay with melatonin. And as I mentioned with the gut flora issue, if you have a question about melatonin, I can really help you. I know a lot about this and things to do. Then caffeine, straightforward. Depends how quickly they metabolize it. Is it likely, less likely, more likely? If this person's a fast metabolizer, it means they're less likely to have sleep affected by caffeine. I bet we all know people in our lives who can go have those coffees and espressos in the afternoon and still go to bed all the time, or even furthermore, people who can have coffee and tea after dinner. And they go to a restaurant, like, they used to ask all the time, do you want coffee or tea after dinner? And some people are like, yep, because it boosts them, helps them drive home, feel good, do whatever they're doing, and then they get home, they still get sleepy on time and do just fine. Others, quite the opposite. If they had a coffee at 8 or 9 p.m., they'd be up till 3 in the morning. And then REM sleep. This is very important. This is a very important part of all of this. Acetylcholine plays a role in promoting REM sleep. Choline, the phase that occurs when we dream and where memory consolidation occurs. And we know people who do this, they have good brain repair. It's good for cognitive function and mental health. So make sure they're getting choline, walking, and if they consume alcohol, they'll sleep better if they consume it before 6 p.m. and limit the quantity. So let's go here. So we've got all these strategies for this entire section. And it recommended a lot of foods and nutrients. And for we're not done. We have stress management. So this is how we perceive stress. The perception of stress is unique to your genotype and your life experience. And so based on different genotypes, we have different issues like low vagal tone, anxiety, depression, OCD, and IBS, especially in women. This genotype is associated with a higher perception of stress. Moderate intensity aerobic exercise would be good if they're medium or high priority. Meditation would be helpful. Yoga, really helpful with stress relief. Tryptophan, green or black tea, prebiotics, probiotics, B vitamins, folate all target this gene to help lower stress perception. By the way, there's a ebook called Dirty Genes that kind of covers a lot of this and kind of talks to people about all these needs around genes and then what you can do about it. But our report, of course, tells us exactly where we are, what we should do about it. So it's not just people like, oh, I have anxiety and function and chest pain. Maybe I'm over here with stress, but you wouldn't know unless you have this test, right? To figure out where you land. So this person associated with reduced percentage digestive disorders, IBS anxiety related to adrenaline levels. But if they're medium or high, it gives us the strategies again, the foods and the exercise, weightlifting and other things that will help us feel better around stress if we have that gene. Here's another person. This person has that high priority. So basically, we're looking at, regulating neurotransmitter glutamate and calming the neurotransmitter GABA. This allele is found to cause a lower expression of this BDNF level. So to support the mood, behavior, and response to stress, this person has increased susceptibility to low BDNF levels, causing high glutamate and low GABA levels in the brain. So you need to be aware of that. So cardio is very important for these people. And it just says it right here, cardio stress relief. It's a high priority. And then weight training and stress relief. So some people need cardio, some people weight training. Some people are here, they're average for cardio and they're high priority for weight training. So these folks, get them in the gym, get them some light weights if they're not weightlifters. Nautilus type machines or resistance machines, resistance bands, dumbbells, anything you can do to support these pathways if they are high, medium to high priority. And the weightlifting helps speed up pathways responsible for clearing excessive dopamine and adrenaline, and therefore a useful tool for you to use in chronic stress. Now, I believe that people who really feel good after they do cardio tend to be people over here, and people who feel really good after they do weight training are over here, and people kind of gravitate to these types of exercise naturally because they like how they feel afterward, and that makes sense. Kind of a reward naturally to how we feel. So, that specifically is the end of the cognitive and mental health section. But of course, all those suggestions that were made bring us down to here, which is the fun part for everybody. And we call it the shopping list and grocery list. Your personalized DNA-based grocery list. So again, we want to get people eating these foods, getting these nutrients from these foods based on their DNA, making them feel better. And it's not about eating all these foods every day. It's about eating some of these foods every day. And there's a lot of really good, healthy foods to choose from. And these aren't the only ones, of course. If you're looking for B2, again, you can Google and find more sources, B6. These just happen to be some of the richest sources. And a lot of people, they think about it. If they thought about it, they say, I like pistachios, I like avocados, I like sweet potatoes. They just don't think about eating them a lot. And in this case, cantaloupe and shrimp and beets and just all these different awesome foods that really help this person based on their DNA and really keeping those genes healthy and staying out of all those issues that we looked at above. And yeah, so you can see them here. And lots of good stuff. Tryptophan came up a lot for this person. So whole oats, bananas, eggs, chicken, turkey, chocolate, peanuts, pumpkin seeds, not just turkey, salmon. So anyway, any questions?